So, welcome, Donald Norman, to our conference here, the UIG-Tagung, Focus Human, Designing Digital Transformation Sustainable in Karlsruhe, Germany. So, my name is Michael Burmester, and well, welcome to our session here. So, we talked about how should we introduce you, and for those interested in human-computer interaction, usability, user experience, user-centered design, there's really no need to introduce Don Norman. But you were very active in many fields, in many research fields, so cognitive psychology, HCI, and design, and especially for the human-computer interaction community, you have developed fundamental and important scientific knowledge. And also on the practical side, so you are co-founder of the Nielsen-Norman Group. So, and personally for me, you have written many influential books. So, and for me, very influential was The Design of Everyday Things. So, and I recommend that book still to my students, and they are fascinated about the insights, about the design of doors, and what can go wrong when designing doors and using them. So I felt the same when I was studying psychology. So the second book I want to mention here is Emotional Design, Why We Love or Hate Everyday Things. I think this book, for me especially, was important because you acknowledged the role of emotions in human-computer interaction. And I think it was an important step in understanding user experience. So then on your website, I read that you have retired 5 times. That is impressive. And so we are so glad that you're still writing inspiring books and that you are here with us today. And we can discuss about your new book, The Design for a Better World, Meaningful, Sustainable, Human-Centered, and yes, there it is.
Actually, we're happy to.
We're happy to. Perfect. And Alexander and I look forward to discussing this with you, and then we will start with the first question.
Okay, thanks, and hello, Don, also from my side. Thanks for sharing your time with us. So your book emphasizes this need to shift from human-centered design to humanity-centered design. So why is that? What are the key drivers? Why is it required to do this shift?
What happened when I started to write the book, or before I wrote the book, when I was trying to decide what to do with my life after this 5th retirement, I wanted to do something that was important to the world. And I realized that all my books have been about making things easier to understand, easier to use, more enjoyable. And that's good, but it doesn't change the world. And when I thought about the major problems facing the world, I realized that much of what I was teaching was part of the problem. So if you take a look at traditional human-centered design, and I still believe in the 4 basic rules that I use for it, but nonetheless, they were focused upon making something for an individual person or maybe small groups of people. We focused on the people who were using it. We ignored completely the impact that we had in mining to get the wonderful materials that we use to make these exotic, wonderful cell phones and computers and automobiles and everything else. We ignored what's called the externalities, how we destroyed the environment. We ignored how we destroy the environment in the manufacturing, putting out various pollutions to the land, the sea, the air. And we ignored the fact that especially the computers and cell phones are difficult or impossible to repair and they don't last a long time, deliberately don't last a long time. And so when we dispose of them, they often, in India, I have seen piles of junk, electronic junk burning because the batteries heat up and burn. And why is that? And so I realized that what I needed to do was to consider the impact of our work on everybody, the biases that we are perpetuating, the social media that is addictive in bad ways often. Yet we taught addiction in schools. We said, that's good, it's good for the business. Well, but it's not good for the planet. So what I did was I took the 4 basic rules, I added a new one, a 5th one, but the basic 4 ones are the same, except expanded. When you try to solve the problem, you look at the impact that you are making on the environment. And so all of the 4 rules are simply expanded to look at the entire system of the world, not just the individual. And that's why I said, I'm going to call this not human, but humanity-centered design. I'm sometimes calling it, instead of HCD, it's H plus CD. It's human plus. Now, people have complained, oh, but why humanity? That's only a small part of the problem. It should be Earth-centered. It should be all sorts of other names, they said. And I said, look, I wanted to use the word design. I wanted it to only be 3 words. I wanted centered to be the second word. That only gave me a choice of 1 word. It is not possible to choose 1 word that covers everything. So I chose humanity. Actually, it had already been used in the field of HCI. I've discovered it, used by a former colleague of mine. And I defined humanity to include anything that impacts living things, which includes the earth and the environment. So that's the answer.
Yeah, thanks. And reading your book, I like especially the parts about meaning. And you made the point that we are measuring the wrong things. So why is that, and what can be changed about that? Well,
we're measuring the things that are easy to measure. Economists have taken over the world, basically. They've said, and economists believe in measuring everything in the same unit, namely money. It's sometimes dollars, sometimes euros, sometimes whatever country you happen to be in. And they can't measure the things that are important. They can't measure happiness, satisfaction with life. Actually, psychologists can. Economists aren't aware of that. And so they measure everything in monetary terms, and they measure things you can't measure. So what they do is they try to figure out something that's, well, what's related to what I care about. The automobile makers do this too. The people doing autonomous driving. It's really important to know how slippery the road is. And that's a function of the road and the oil and the state of your tires and the kind of tires. But so it's really hard to measure slippery it is, but they know that it's more slippery when it's raining than when it isn't. Well, how do you know if it's raining? Well, it used to be they just looked to see if your windshield, if your washers were on, what wipers. I don't know what word you use to describe it. And today, actually, we have sensors that automatically turn on to wash to dry. So you look at the sensor if rain is hitting the windshield. That doesn't tell you how slippery the road is. It's true that when it's raining, it's more slippery, but they call that slipperiness. The economists, when they were trying to measure the risk of a stock, they measured the standard deviation of the price. Standard deviation, they call it beta. Standard deviation is not risk, but they name it risk, and they think it means risk. So the problem is you measure what you cannot measure by something, you measure something that's related, and you name it by what you care about, and then you forget that you didn't measure what you care about, you measured something else. So yeah, it's time we changed. And some of the measurements are even evil, because gross domestic product, which tells you how good a country is simply how much money the country spends. And the money could be spent for evil, it could be spent for pollution, it could be spent for good, it could be spent for education. It doesn't matter, you're spending. And worse, if you spend money as a company to manufacture things and you pollute the environment, and then the country comes in and has to spend money to clean up the pollution, hey, the pollution counts twice. It makes you a better country. Nonsense. By the way, there's nothing in the book that I'm saying or complaining about that other people have not complained. I mean, I'm not the only person saying this. And so the thing that's unique in the book is not the points I'm making. other people have made it. And I think that's a good point. That means that I'm not some nut thinking about these crazy things. Lots of very prominent, intelligent people have said the same things. What my concern is, why hasn't anybody done anything about it? And so the book is, what's unique about the book is the perspective I put on. And it's this perspective that comes from human-computer interaction. It's humans and computers, or if you like, human and technology. And so I focus on human behavior. And what I've written about are all the issues in human behavior that prevent us from doing good.
So I want to come back again to human-centered design and humanity-centered design. Both are processes, design processes in a way, and you defined principles for both processes. And so my question is, what are the key differences in the processes between human-centered design and humanity-centered design?
Well, I'll get out my little piece of paper too, which is, it's actually taken from my website, the 4 principles of human-centered design, and then the 5 principles of humanity-centered design. So it's transforming human into humanity. And basically, the first principle is solve the core root issues, not just the problem as presented, because usually the problem is the symptom. That's the same. That has not been changed. The second one is focus on the people. That's human-centered. And I said, well, focus on the entire ecosystem of people, living things, and the physical environment. The third is take a systems point of view, realizing that most complications result from the interdependencies. Well, but when I looked at systems, I looked at, I don't know, if I'm using my cell phone, I looked at the way that the different applications interacted with the operating system, the way it interacted with the cellular system, because if you had a weak signal, it changed the way things were working, and how it interacted with the technology behind the scenes. And I say, yeah, but that's not the entire system. So you have to take a long-term systems point of view, recognizing that some things that you do have a big impact someplace else. And it may take years, because when I use look, we talk about digital devices and we say, well, you're talking about physical things. And I say, well, wait a minute. Doesn't every digital thing end up in a physical thing so you can use it? I mean, you're projecting my picture there on the screen, and it's a digital signal, yes, but it's a physical projector, and the screen is a physical screen, and you're holding physical microphones in your hands. So where does the electricity come from to run those things? Is it done through a pollution plant, using fossil fuels? Or how are those microphones or projectors or computers manufactured? So all of these have an impact. And I use air conditioning as one of my examples, cooling the air, saying when you cool the air, you heat the atmosphere more than the heat. You take the heat out of your room and you put it back into the atmosphere, but you put more heat into the atmosphere than you've taken out. That's the second law of thermodynamics. Nothing is perfectly efficient. And then where does the electricity come to run the air conditioner? That's from some plant that's putting waste heat into the air. And, that may not seem like very much, but there are 3 billion air conditioners in the world. And over a decade, 10 years of use, it has raised the temperature considerably. So that's the third point of view. And the fourth one is basically the iterative test. You build your samples, you test them, and you see if it works for people. And I say, yes, do that, but also make sure it works for the ecosystem and the cultures for which it's designed, that it doesn't change the culture in negative ways. And finally, I said, there's one more point. The history of colonialism, which is mainly a Western, it started in the West, started probably in Great Britain, but it includes the West, which is all of Europe, but also the United States, went around the world and discovered all of these uninhabited lands. And they sort of took over, and they explained, and the uninhabited lands actually were inhabited, but nobody knew that at the beginning. And the people were often called savages, so we didn't have to worry about them being people. But the best example is India, where the British came in and said, "Oh, you're not very good at governing yourself, so we'll govern you for you." Isn't that nice of us? Well, the Indians don't think so. And that's what we do as designers. We go into some other culture when we're trying to do some societal good, and we say, "Oh, you have unsafe water, or your educational system is bad." And so, look, here's the correct solution. And we do the study, and we have a big report, and we say, it's going to cost you 10 billion euros and take you 20 years, but it'll be much better for you. And these never work, because an outside person coming in, the experts do understand the problem, but they don't understand the people. And so they don't understand their capabilities and the way they live. And so the fifth principle is, don't design for people, design with them. Or if you like, design from them. Because, we talk about trying to do the early stage, the double diamond. The first stage is send in the design researchers, the anthropologists, to find out how people live and what their problems are. Well, when you're doing societal work, you don't have to do that. The people who live there know their problems. And they've already have tried to attack them, but they have limited resources. And for some problems, they need more expert knowledge. If you're trying to improve sanitation, you actually need some experts in sanitation. But so designers should be there as guides, as facilitators, as mentors, but not to tell them what to do. So that's all. That's the 5 principles of humanity-centered design, which is simply an expansion of the 4 principles of human-centered.
I was asking about socio-technical systems thinking, and why you emphasize this so much in the book as an important piece that we should consider more seriously when designing or following a humanity-centered design approach.
I didn't change the notion of the system. It's what I changed was the emphasis. That what I'm calling the socio-technical system, because it's people. That's the societal part. It's the social part, and there's technology, and but it's also the terrain, the country we're living in, the weather, lots of other things that are very important. And I've always talked about the importance of systems, but I always looked at the narrow system, as I said earlier, just the part that impacted the way I'm using this new technology or old technology. Yet I think today that's too small. We must also consider the impact on people, on society. Look how the social networks, when they started out, were kind of nice. We got to really be able to talk to people, and I keep in touch with people that I haven't. Whenever I move from one location to another, I often lose contact with the people that I used to be friends with. But today I don't have to anymore. I keep in touch with my former students, with former friends all over the world. But so it started off as this wonderful way of keeping in touch. And I realized that even Twitter, I thought was so wonderful, because it made me realize some very famous person who was sort of very far away and remote, and turned out he would complain about the quality of pizza or about something that happened, and I realized, oh yeah, everybody's just a person. And but today it has turned into evil. It has turned into a way that people can gather together and they can spread lies and deceits, and they can attack people. And I've been attacked, and it's not pleasant. And but how did that happen? And so and it's very difficult, by the way, to figure out how you can have the positive part without the negative part. But we have to worry about that. And by the way, it isn't just on people. This is changing nations, because it's attacking politics, it's attacking people's views, and it's even changing elections in countries all over the world.
Another point that you made is the importance of social science. So in your book, you talk about that technology will not solve the problem. You also somehow say the economics guys make a lot of things wrong. So you argue for collaborating more with social science. This sounds good, but as we all know, it's not that easy to get interdisciplinary people or people from different disciplinary backgrounds to work together. So what's your recommendation in academia, but also in practice, to get these guys from different disciplines seriously working together?
I blame the problems of that. I'm not a fan of modern academics, and it's what has happened in academics is that the modern research universities, which are the more prestigious universities in the world, have all focused upon hiring the very best people in any discipline. And well, how do you have so many people who are all the very best in the discipline? Well, you have subdisciplines, you have specialties. So what has happened is that the university really reinforces the notion of specialists, people who are true experts in some very narrow field, and you get promoted. Look, if you do something that saves the lives of 2,000 people, people say, yeah, that's nice. But if you do a very narrow focus paper and it's published in Nature magazine or Science magazine, you get promoted. And so as a result, we have all these specialties. They don't talk to each other. So many people in a department, take computer science or take mathematics, take psychology. The department itself has so many different specialists that you don't even understand what the other people in your own department are doing. It's so specialized. But when you actually want to build something and do something in the world, the information from the specialists is very important. It is true, they're doing good work. But to put it together, and this is what designers do, put it together, you have to actually choose from all of the different areas. And in the end, aren't we always building things for people? And that's why the social sciences are so important. But the social sciences have the same problem. If you go to a psychologist and say, well, I want to learn about people, well, I can tell you how the ear works, or I can tell you about, this or that, or some other specialty. So I say, if you really want to understand people, go find someone who writes books, an author who writes fiction. Because if you go to the literature department, but actually the literature department is the same problem. It has all those specialties and their special way of talking about things that to me is usually unintelligible. But the people who write popular fiction, they understand people. And what they do is the good ones are really good at observing people and understanding how people react and what people do. Because when they depict fiction, when they depict people in their novels, you have to be able to read them and say, yeah, I know somebody like that, or that's a really good person, or I hate people like that, etc. And so it isn't just that we should attend to the social scientists. So the attempt in the United States and the West to do STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and some people say STEAM by adding arts. No, that's wrong. Because what that is doing is still saying we have still separate disciplines. I'm saying that we need the generalists, the people who go to cut across the disciplines, and they aren't just STEAM. They're everything, like people who write novels.
So in your book, you put the designers in a, I think, new and very central position in these design processes. And you said the designers are in a unique position contribute to a more sustainable world. Could you more explain why especially designers are now the main persons there?
I think that I would like designers to be the central leaders, but I don't believe most designers are ready for this yet, because designers, a lot of designers are taught in art and architecture schools. And design is part of the art and architecture school. And you learn, and the problem is art is not design and design is not art. Because artists are doing wonderful things, but they're making pronouncements, they're following their own course of thought, and they want to make their own statements. That isn't design, because design is actually made for other people. And you can't make it the way you'd like it to be. You have to make it the way the other people need it to be. And that's very different. Second, yes, there are aesthetic parts of design. As you've already said, I wrote this book, emotional design. But if I'm doing a new sewer system or a health system or whatever, I don't need aesthetics. I need to bring together people from many different disciplines, including the people that are living there, to make this work, because design is a way of thinking. Now, there are many other disciplines that actually build these complex systems and have better skills than we do at managing across disciplines. But the problem with them is they focus on efficiency, cost, productivity. And no, we focus on the people themselves. So personally, I'm not saying those other components are not important, so we should partner with them. But design is the unique field where its focus is on building the things with the emphasis on the people, the enjoyment and satisfaction of people. But why can't designers do that? That's because we're too narrowly trained. So I think designers have to have a much broader knowledge. We have to know history, we have to know economics, and here's the thing that most people object to: you have to know politics. Because in the end, the big problems end up being political, which is correct. That's where it belongs. Because the politicians, the good politicians, are saying, I'm trying to run a country, and we have many, many different opinions, and there are many people who disagree with me. And the only way we can make progress is if we get together and compromise or try to figure out a way that we all agree upon. That's the good politics. And designers have to play a role in that.
The classical designers, so the aesthetic designers, will be part of the team then, and we have a humanity-centered designer, and we have maybe an aesthetic designer. Is that the case then?
We already do. We have an industrial designer, we have a graphical designer, we have many different kinds of designers who come together. Because designers also have many specialties, and sort of need the specialties, because industrial design requires skills that are quite different from graphics design, which are quite different from interaction design.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Alexander and I, we are working for an innovation hub called Focus Human, and we try to support small and medium-sized enterprises to implement human-centered digital transformation. And when we hear about humanity-centered design, and there are so many other things as well. So there's involvement of the society. We have a long-term perspective. We have a perspective on the entire ecosystem. That I think, according to my experience, for small and medium-sized enterprises, that sounds a little bit overwhelming. So a lot of complex challenges are there. So when we would start to try to implement humanity-centered design in small and medium-sized enterprises, what would you recommend to not overwhelm them?
Actually, it's not as bad as it sounds. Yes, if you read my book or any of the many books that are coming out, you'll say, oh my goodness, there's too much. And besides, we can't afford it. You know, we can't change everything we're doing. That will cost more money. We have to charge. If we have to charge the customers more, they will not buy. So how do we do that? I think it's not as difficult as it sounds. And what you have to do is, first of all, you have to really examine the methods that you're using. But, you know, when I say that we should be careful not to produce much waste, does that cost more money? No, it shouldn't actually, because the waste is actually wasted money. And so is there a way in which we can do the items, maybe change a little bit about our manufacturing or specifying the materials, which are less costly? They may be more costly by themselves, but they're less costly over time. There are many different ways of looking at this. Now, many times the business model might have to change, because if you make your money by selling products all the time, new products, well, if you're making food, that's okay. The people eat it. They need more. You don't have to worry about replacement. But if you're making a mobile phone, and instead of lasting 2 years, it now lasts 20 years. Oh, what do? People don't buy as much. Well, the old model of phones used to be a service. We used to not buy the phones, but we used to pay per month. And what we were guaranteed was efficient phone service and the instruments themselves. And if the instrument broke, people would come and fix it or replace it. It was just part of the service. And we do that already. If the engines in big commercial aviation, on the big jets, the engines are made by separate companies, General Electric, Rolls-Royce, and they don't sell the engines anymore. They sell the airtime. They'll sell you so many hours of use. And so what they do is they simply guarantee to keep the engines running, and they have the complete instrumentation on the engines. So they know when the engine is going to have a problem. So they can call the engine in and replace it or repair it when it's needed. Whereas today, it's more costly because today you never know when the engine will go bad. So there's a certain number of hours, the safe number of hours before you must fix it, which is before most engines need repair. But by having all this instrumentation, the company guarantees that only when it's needed do we call it in. The same with tires, not for automobiles, but for big trucks. A lot of tires are now being sold by miles, and we guarantee certain miles, and we put instrumentation on the tires, which is signaling back its, the tread depth and whether it's in good shape. And so we change the business models. But again, for the small company, it's usually just small changes that you need to make.
Looking at time, you unfortunately have only one last short question, which may be not the simple one. When is your book appearing in German?
Well, I'm going to be in Germany in a month,
Okay.
I'm going to be in Düsseldorf. And
the book, when is it translated in German, published for the smaller, medium-sized enterprises that prefer German than English still?
Well, no, I'm in the middle of trying to learn Spanish, so one language at a time.
Okay.
And by the way, when I got my PhD, I had to know 2 languages, and one of them was German. And I failed the test 3 times, and that's all you're allowed to take it. And I think they took pity on me the 3rd time and allowed me to pass. But yes.
Maybe you can put it on.
I wish I knew more languages. But I don't. So I'm sorry. I apologize.
You will manage. Tom, I would really like to thank you for taking the time with us today, responding to our questions. I would all recommend reading your book. It was great to read, and it also raised some thoughts on my side. I hope we meet each other physically at some point in time. So far, I would wish you a wonderful day. And
come to Düsseldorf in October. There's already a UX group at Düsseldorf who is actually, I'm going to speak with them. So there's already going to be a meeting just because I happen to be in the country.
Okay, great.
Anyway, thank you, and thank you for the questions, because I think they were exactly the perfect questions where I could sort of summarize the major themes of the book in a relatively short time. So thank you.
Thank you, and take care. Bye.
Bye.